So let's go back to 2014 under then President Barack Obama and Vice President Joe Biden, of course. This is right after Vladimir Putin took Crimea, and he did that quickly. Didn't take 21 days. The Ukrainian president at that time was invited to address a joint session of Congress, and he begged for military aid. The president at that time said, listen, this is going to happen again. It might not happen next month or next year, but Vladimir Putin, we just gave a mouse a cookie, and he's going to come back for a glass of milk. Fast forward to 2022, here we are, and the Ukrainian military was basically completely unprepared for what we're seeing right now, and they are doing one heck of a job as unprepared as we left them. But why? Why didn't we help them way back then?
You know, that's a good question. It's pretty clear that the Obama administration was determined not to give lethal aid to Ukraine. You know, they sent them, pillows and MREs. Now, President Trump sent them a substantial amount of lethal aid. I think the Obama administration was worried about offending the Russian government and causing another invasion. Obviously, that wasn't valid given that the invasion took place anyway. And I don't think it's any accident that of the last 4 presidents, there was an invasion by Russia of a local country during 3 presidencies, but not the Trump presidency, because Trump was seen as a strong president and he had provided lethal aid to Ukraine. Yeah, I think the Democrats call that an anomaly, but there was relative peace during the Trump years, wasn't there? You know, it's just, it's so amusing to see all these Trump haters try to explain this away right now, to try to somehow blame this invasion of Ukraine on Donald Trump. Well, Donald Trump was colluding with the Russians. Why didn't Putin invade Ukraine during the Trump presidency? Yeah. None of them have an answer for that.
Right? Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Fred, Zelensky is going to address Congress in just a few hours. We know that he wants a no-fly zone. We know that they are asking for those planes. Do you think he's going to ask for that? And what do you think will happen after this speech?
I watched the Zelensky presentation to the Canadian Parliament yesterday, and he's going to personalize this and talk about the horrors of this war and press the U.S. and other NATO members to give him what he wants, not just more military aid, but to ask for a no-fly zone. And I understand where he is. I'd ask for that, too, if I was a Ukrainian president. But that would bring us into a war with Russia. I think these intense sanctions on Russia, I think they're going to work. I think they are working, and they will eventually bring Putin to the negotiating table.
Or he will be overthrown. I mean, what I saw on state television in Russia yesterday, you know, that young producer getting behind the news anchor there and holding up a sign saying, don't believe the propaganda, you know, stop this unjust war. That says a lot about what's probably going on behind the Iron Curtain, so to speak, in Russia right now. Yesterday, President Zelensky said that he's okay if Ukraine doesn't join NATO. Take a listen.
It's clear that Ukraine is not a member of NATO. We understand it. We are adequate people. We have heard for years about open doors, but we have already heard that we won't be able to join it. It's the
Fred, day 3 of peace talks today. Does this change anything?
Well, he sort of indicated that before. It's not a lot to offer because Ukraine's not going to be admitted to NATO anytime soon, maybe if ever. And I've been on this program saying we have not put nearly enough energy into promoting peace talks. This administration is all about threatening Russia, threatening China. You're going to really suffer if you do this or that. Very little talk about peace talks. We need to press both sides to work to a ceasefire, to de-escalate, and to solve the situation, and I'm just not seeing it.
Fred, we saw Emmanuel Macron, Olaf Scholz, they picked up the phone, they called Putin. The president, as far as we know, has not. The president is going to Brussels next Thursday. Why is he waiting?
Well, look, it's worse than that. He sent Kamala Harris last week to Eastern Europe. I mean, we need to send a serious negotiator to talk about the situation, not a vice president who, I'm sorry, is frankly a fool and made the situation worse. But you're right. Why wasn't Biden in Europe 2 weeks ago? Why is he going next week? Why isn't he on a plane today to talk to our European allies? I mean, it almost seems like, you know, Biden doesn't know where he is. He doesn't understand how serious this is.
Yeah. Yeah, by the way, you talk about Joe Biden's predecessors. I think all of his immediate predecessors would be there now or would have already traveled to NATO countries in Europe, in Eastern Europe, perhaps even Poland, perhaps even Ukraine. The fact that Joe Biden made it plan, he made plans yesterday to go 8 days from now, like I would make plans to go there. Like I got to fly commercial. He can get an Air Force One anytime he wants, Fred.